right. Yellowhorn Podcast number 2. What's going on, Zach? We were gone last week. Unfortunately, it was holidays. We were both busy. Didn't get a chance to get down and record it. But a lot has happened since then, and a lot of people, gave really good feedback, especially for that, for that first podcast, Zach. So I think
we appreciate everyone who gave feedback for that podcast. Thank you so much for we didn't. When you're starting a podcast, you're like, will this flop? Will people like us? I mean, collectively, I think, not to say we're popular or anything like that, but people seem to enjoy our presence somewhat online. We both have YouTube and stuff like that. Check that out, by the way, for both of us. But sure. I mean, better than expected, in my opinion. I thought it was going to not be as well received or even watched. I thought it could have been a little bit more of a flop, or it seemed pretty high up. I mean, maybe this one's maybe that was just an episode 1 thing, and it's gonna go like that. I don't know. We'll see.
Who knows? Yeah, where it'll go up. Either way, though, it definitely was well received by everybody. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. We're gonna try to be a little bit more on topic for this week. It's always tough. Of course, we don't have much podcasting experience. So we're gonna try our best. Every week we'll get better. We did get a few feedback, so we'll follow up on that feedback. And okay. And, my cat's just walking in the background.
Someone is not a fan of the Yellowhorn Podcast at all. That cat hates us.
Yeah,
your cat hates
these guys
the
are
podcast.
Talking. Anyway, yeah, okay. So we got a couple good topics to talk about today, Zach. We missed last week, so there were a lot of things that happened. We only have about an hour time frame to hit a lot of stuff. So today we're going to be talking, mostly about 2 different topics. We might cover a few other things. First things first, we're definitely going to discuss the $3,000 Chill TCG Cup, sponsored by GG Tour, that just wrapped up this past weekend. I think 2 days ago from now when we're recording. Was a great turnout for a tournament. We had just under 300 players. Definitely a lot of cool stuff to talk about. And then after that, we definitely want to talk about the recent banning of ADP, the card ADP, in the Limitless Online Tournament Series. Kind of a little bit of a niche topic. Of course, no other tournaments have really stated that they'll be banning that card, but Limitless is, of course, a really big name in the online tournament community. So we definitely want to just touch on that. Not so much Limitless, but just the idea of banning ADP and what that might mean for the metagame. So I guess we'll just get into it, Zach. So you played, right, at this past weekend?
I mean, if you want to consider it playing, I went in with Mad Party, and I feel like I went on a mission with a mission destined to fail. It was one of those, before regionals, someone comes up to you and knocks on the door, and they're like, I have the secret deck. And you're like, oh my god, everything sounds so much better at 2 o'clock in the morning. But it wasn't a random person who was knocking at my door. It was Mr. Daniel Altavilla, Dax PTCG.
Great player.
Yeah, literally one of the best players in the entire world. And they're like, Mad Party's so good. Zach, it's a math deck. These are literally Danny's words. Zach, it's a math deck. You just attack. And I'm like, okay, sounds pretty easy. Danny's really credible. Let's go with this deck. Got Gabe Smart going on with the deck as well. Got Ethan Hagee going with the deck. And we all went for 60 for 60. I mean, Ethan played the wrong Synestes, but I'll give him 60 for 60. And then I literally remember going into round 1. I'm like, I hit ADP. And I asked the group, I was like, what do I do versus ADP? And then everyone had a mixed result. And then I had this gut feeling where I'm like, I'm about to lose this whole event. Oh my gosh. I wasted my entry fee. We're absolutely about to get bodied. I proceeded to go 2-3 drop. I mean, I could have made it, but let's be real. Mad Party would have not won those last 4 games.
For a run with Mad Party, it might have been.
I'm going to clear the record. I don't blame anyone for presenting Mad Party to me. I made my own choice, whatever. And I appreciate what Dan, I appreciate the offering of Danny to show me his cool deck that he's been working on. It did work out for Gabe, though, kind of. He made day 2, and then day 2 was a bit of a crash and burn. I've heard some murmurings about Uber drivings and stuff like that, and Gabe had it didn't go well for Gabe to get day 2, but it was a valiant effort.
For sure. I mean, Gabe, of course, is a great player. Danny, super good player. The whole testing team you guys got over there are just full of great players. I'm not trying to say that Mad Party was a bad decision. It might not have been a more solidified decision to play that deck than maybe playing Peak or E-Turn or something like that. And I think most people would agree. But I mean, the fact that I don't know how many Mad Parties. Let me just look. So if we look how many Mad Parties were in the tournament in total, which I believe probably most of them were you guys. We had 8 in total Mad Parties. Having one of those make day 2 out of 265 players, definitely not a terrible stat. Like realistically, it did end up with a 37%, or no, sorry, a flat 50% win rate.
Yeah,
which
but like
honestly is not terrible. But
I feel like if we look into like what the group is, I literally need to pull my calculator up. So like I'm looking at Gabe. Like even for the sake of it, let's just look at Gabe, myself, and Danny, because that's our core testing. I know Ethan's been away for a while.
yeah,
So like let's give him the benefit of the doubt. His 5-3-1 record would probably bring our group up. We went 7, 9, 11. We went 11 and 12 with the deck. Okay. Which to me, it's under a 50-50. And like I'm not trying to say that like our group would have a like when you have some of the greatest players in the game, and we could factually look at that being like, at least for Danny and myself, in real life play, we were 1st and 4th in North America, globally respective.
for sure.
To go under 50-50 collectively as a group is not good. At the end of the day, I feel like if anyone out here is like Mad Party is a fun deck. I will give like it's clearly a fun deck. I think it's a tier 2, 2.5, 3 deck. It's not close to tier 1.5. It's not close to tier 1. It's an option if you're in a very peak meta game. And that's the best way I could put it. I mean, I think Colossal's better, and Colossal probably hits more things where like you could beat Eternatus, you could beat other things.
For sure. Yeah, my camera battery just died. So let me just we're gonna go on a little pause. I'll edit it out. I'm just gonna grab the new battery. Should have paid attention to that beforehand. It's all good.
I was about to say that anyways.
My bad.
Oh, you're all good.
It's an easy fix, but that's funny though. Yeah. Hold up. Keep your train of thought.
I'm trying to think about how much I hate Mad Party right now.
Channel that energy.
Ooh.
And we're back.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Everything should still be recording. Let me just double check. Yep. Okay.
I mean,
sorry about that.
Anything would affect anything on my side.
No, yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Camera died. We're back. Zach, you were talking about Mad Party.
Yeah, Mad Party. I mean, I just feel like Mad Party is just one of those things where we kind of solved Mad Party for everyone. I don't think that it's worthwhile to continue working on. Now, if you don't care about wins or losses and you just want to have fun playing Mad Party, that's totally your prerogative. For me, I enjoy kind of being on the cusp of the metagame, the cusp of the winning decks. And my other choice, Pikarom, which I think actually ended up winning the tournament from looking at the results.
Of course it did.
Literally, probably the exact list that I was going to play, the one that I posted on my YouTube channel, the one that that my group created up until this point, with feedback from other players and stuff like that. It's one of those things like, I can only sit here feeling stupid, being like, why did I not play the best deck in the room? Especially when I know how to play it fairly well.
You definitely know how to play it well, and you definitely know that it's good. I think most people do, especially know that it's good these days. The problem is, right, is like making decisions going into a tournament. And like I think you mentioned it to me, like the safe decision is often just the smart decision, right? And when you're playing, a 9 rounds of best of 3 tournament with day 2 Swiss and then, top cut, you definitely want the deck that's been proven to go the distance for a lot of tournaments. And I think a lot of people sort of followed your footsteps. I think a lot of people probably would have thought, Zach, that you were going to play Pikarom, and especially after your Players Cup win, and especially after the last GG Tour tournament with 400 players where Pikarom did get the win. People definitely understand that when the money's on stake and you're choosing the best, most consistent list, you're probably going to go and you're probably going to play Pikarom. If we just take a look, right, at the meta share for the tournament as in whole, we had 45 ADPs and 44 Pikarom, Zach. So
sure.
I'm going to go ahead and say that since you played Mad Party, you would have been that 45th Pikarom.
I mean, our group would have been like 45, 46, 47, 48. Right. But
and that's why, right. So I think Pikarom is the best deck, and it would have been the most played deck had not the Mad Party hype overcome the boys over there. But you live and you learn. You live and you learn,
Yeah.
man. I don't think anyone's gonna knock you for it. I think if
Well,
you
I'll
don't,
put it like this: like online tournaments feel less real than like than in real life tournaments. Like, I mean, I think that you guys at Chill and GG Tour did a great job of making it feel like a regionals. Like the fact that there's like enough players where there's a threshold, where there's a day 2 Swiss. I watched Michelle, my girlfriend. She was able to make day 2, and I watched it. She's like, this is my first day 2. Like to her, and I'm sure to many others, this is like it's a real accomplishment to make day 2 at the event. I mean, I think there's almost 300 players. It's about as big as a small regional championships. So you guys are effectively running a regional championships with some cool cash prizing online. That's awesome. For me, like I look at it kind of based off the entry cost, and I'm like, I've spent $20 on League Cup entries and stuff like that. Right. And like I've made more serious choices in real life there. So for me, when it comes down to especially if you use like code Chill5, it was like $5. And I look at the cost and I'm like, the cost is $5. I could throw it away on Mad Party now. It's an opportunity cost because events like this don't come up all the time. And I mean, totally grateful that there's organizations out there running cash tournaments, but I threw it away on Mad Party. Like I went in for the fun because I don't know, like part of me was like, that was the play. And I can kick myself afterwards. To anyone who felt like they were in the same position, you can always look forward and jump back. Because again, no one remembers online. My Players Cup 2 is probably long gone. People could forget about that in a couple of weeks. And it's one of those things like, I don't know, like these events.
Try to think back to Players Cup 1. Like, do you remember any, if you were to just ask somebody, like, hey, like, who was the Players Cup 1 champion? Like, what was the best decks? Like, what was it like? I don't know if many people would really remember. I think collectively, right, as a whole, people might remember, like, sort of like a month or two of, like, the whole scene, right,
sure.
of online tournaments. Like, I can think back to, you know, when Dragapult and Pikaram were just, like, destroying people in the Rebel Clash, you know, format, pre-rotation and stuff. I remember kind of that. But, like, overall, I couldn't just pick out one tournament and be like, you know, this was...
find the winners, right? Like, literally, who won those events going on for the Hegsters or the Limitless tournaments? Like, if you ask me who the Limitless Grand Champion was, I don't remember. And that's honest. Yeah. Like, and it's not that they're a forgetful person, and it's not any disrespect. I just, like, it's so long ago, and there's 5-6 events a day now, man. Like, it's one of those things, like...
Exactly.
It's hard to choose which ones. Like, they're all different time zones, different organizers. I mean, sure, you get the Hegsters, the Chills, the Krolos, the GG Tours, like, and then there's all these other tournaments, and it's just like, it's just a flood. My mind is melting in this pandemic.
No, I understand. And on one hand, it's good, right? You want to give people the opportunity to compete and play whatever time of day, whatever day it might be of the week. You know, but at some point, you know, the format is different. Not only is it an online event, but it's different, right? So for for IRL events, like there might be a regional every other month or every month or so.
Regionals are actually kind of like every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks or so. Okay,
yeah.
So that's fine though, right? So like, imagine if there was one big online event every 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Like it would be much different than if there was 2 every day. All week, every week, right?
Because then we wouldn't be tracking all these little tournaments. Like, no one would be... Right. You would be only focusing on creating content for the bigger tournaments instead of, like, focusing on, like, these are the grand finals of Chill 13. These are the whatever. Right. Just because information is more valid towards the bigger events. And that's usually how it goes in real life. Now we're just kind of in this thing where everyone's doing their own thing. Everything's all over the... Like, we're in a new world. We're in a new world, right? And you've been... Yeah. I know we've talked about it off the record a bit, but you've been able to pave your own path throughout that. Just kind of like due to the oddity of the situation that we're in. And I mean, it's absolutely like, it's fantastic to watch as an outsider. So congrats on that.
Thanks. Yeah, and I mean, that's another thing too, is like people like yourself who predominantly are top level players in, you know, the real, like the IRL tournament scenes and stuff. Like when all this happened in the pandemic, it was a harsh transition, right? And there was a lot of things that are different about it. And, you know, it might be easier for somebody who played PTCGO all day, any day, every day anyway, to translate over, right, to this whole pandemic scene. But for a lot of those players who consistently played in IRL events, it might be just a little bit difficult. I'm not saying that you haven't made that transition. I mean, you won probably one of the biggest events, online events of all time.
I like, so... Without saying much, we've definitely had some speed bumps in the way when it comes to Zach Lesage playing online play. We're in a different place now. We're in a better mental spot. Like, it's one of those things where there's a lot of stuff that goes down. Like, I think even yesterday, like, I was watching, like, there's bickering about players getting game losses, not checking in. I don't want to comment on any of that, but it's like, you see it all the time. There's just stuff that happens online that people are not used to. Like, it's either, like, people are confused about judge calls and stuff like that. I'm sure you've seen some when you run events. I've ran a few events, and you see judge calls that are just, like, absolutely ridiculous. I've had players from different countries tell me to F off while I'm the judge, and I have to be like, oh, maybe it's just, like, a language thing, right? Like, it's one of those things, like, it's just crazy. Online's the wild, wild west, and we didn't even know the west existed.
It's wild. It's wild,
March.
bro. It is so wild, and I love it. Right? I mean, it's sort of like where I've grown up, and Chill TCG has grown up in the online pandemic world. But, like, you know, and people always ask too. They're like, well, you know, when IRL events come back, when the pandemic ends, like, none of this is going to really be talked about. It's not really going to be a thing. People aren't going to play in these online events. I don't know if it'll just go away entirely. But I definitely will, if things are going to change, right, and things are going to be different a year from now when people are playing in IRL events, and things kind of go back to normal, everyone will have to adapt back to that. But there's definitely a lot of names, a lot of events that, you know, just will cease to exist a year from now, whereas Pokemon TCG in general and players like you, Zach, will be around no matter what. And I think that, you know, this is a strange time for a lot of people, but, you know, I think overall, a lot of people have done well. You know, the way that tournaments are run these days and the size of the tournaments compared to how they were at the beginning of the pandemic, things are just a lot different. You know, they're a lot different in general. We see a lot of successful players, people who are very adamant in competing regularly in these online events, people from other countries who you might not have known. I mean, that's really cool. Like, that's awesome. Like, don't get me wrong. But, you know, as much as it's awesome for some people, it's going to be a little bit harder for other people. And, yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too much into it, though. We have this whole tournament, right, to talk about. So
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of cool results talking about the tournament, and I mean, I think we already touched it up on the top of the head, but Pikarom won the tournaments. I think you and I had our friendly bets before this, and we were like, which decks are going to be at the top, and you and I both
said Pikarom.
I said Mad Party, and you said Blounds. So I again, I'm out here being.
Last podcast when we talked about it for, like, the next tournament, I'm totally confident that we both said that we think Pikarom will be up there. But then we picked another deck that we thought other than Pikarom would get up there. I said Blounds just because, to me, whenever there's a big best of 3 tournament that, you know, that seems to be more based around consistency, Blounds always ends up kind of breaching higher up in the tournament. Of course, sometimes it does well in these, like, best of 1, like, one-day tournaments, but for both online regionals that we've had, it's done really, really well. And, you know, Blounds, Blacephalon, people played 22 Blounds in the tournament, but there was a lot of people playing that Crestcephalon variant, right, which was heavily based around other things like Reshiram and Charizard and Cramorant.
Yeah, it's like a fire toolbox deck for anyone who, like, there's a bunch of Pokemon that you could just power up with Welder instead of just Blacephalon. And I think just in case anyone's, like, a little bit unclear on that one.
Yeah. Right, and even just a normal Blacephalon list these days, like, we'll typically have in, like, a 1 Cramorant and 1 Reshizard with 4 Blacephalon. So there's a lot of decks. It's kind of like Pika. Like, there's a wide variety of decks that integrate Blacephalon into their list, and I think that it's smart. It's a really good deck. But we had 22 Blacephalons in the tournament. 3 of those made top 8. Right, so I think overall that's a very impressive statistic. We had 44 Pikarom. 4 of those made top 8. And then we had that 1 ADP, which is going to happen if you have 45 players playing ADP. Like, one of them's
it's one of those things where, like, I feel that's the way that I always look at it. You got to be that one person with ADP. No matter how well you play ADP, there's going to be that turn where you're like, cool, I can't get Altered Creation GX off to save my life, or I prized both my ADPs, or I prized all but one of my water energies. Like, and the deck has so many struggle factors. To Eric, who played the deck, I mean, I think that was the one with 12 metal energies, right?
Yes, 12 metal energies.
That was a really cool list. Like, I mean, it sounds like a meme at first, where they're like, it looks like theme deckish. But if the goal is just to get off the Altered Creation GX and then have energies in play, when you're using Intrepid Sword and drawing those cards and getting those energies, you have a higher chance of getting energies. And I mean, I think the idea behind most of the list was pretty smart, but they were the one who was destined to be there.
Hammers too, right? I mean, more energy equals a better chance against hammers. One thing that he was only running, so he was running 12 metal,
Sure.
but only 2 water still. I think maybe a third water, and like
I like 3 water in the deck. Like,
me too.
I've said it a bunch of times. I'm like, if ADP had 80 cards, you'd be playing 5 waters, no cap.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
or an energy retrieval or something.
Yeah, and you kind of have to take into account, right? So like worst case scenario, right? One of your waters gets prized, and let's say one of them gets hit off with hammers, right?
Yeah.
That's not always going to happen, but it could happen, and it might. And you just want to have a third water in there just in case. And,
Sure.
And
hammers are a big card nowadays. Like, it's just like hammers is disgusting. Yeah.
It's a staple card.
It just wins. Like, we're talking about, like, if we want to talk about the last 3 major events, because we have, I think the last 3 major events are the GG Tour Chill Cup 1, your Cup number 2, and the Players Cup 2. Those are the last 3 that we got going on the past, like, month, 2 months. All won by Pikarom, all won by Crushing Hammer decks. Like, it's one of those things where, like, you want to be playing 3 waters if you're playing ADP. I don't even, like...
For sure, you want 3 waters.
You probably don't want to be playing ADP because statistically it does not seem like it's remotely close to being the best deck. It's the best deck to see success if you're a player who might not regularly see success, is the nicest way I'd say it.
Well, I'd say it's the best deck to go 50-50, to go 4-4.
It feels like a grind. Every matchup feels like a grind. You're like, unless you're playing against something stupid like Mad Party, or like one of these decks that like a Desi Goons deck and you have an Aegislash, ADP doesn't feel like you're dominating. You feel like you're either like you feel like you're sacking and rolling against your opponent. I never like sat there and like gave myself a pat on the back and said I played ADP so much better than my opponent played Pokemon. It's like, haha, I got 3 Crushing Hammerheads and marnied them into absolute garbage.
You're like, I got turn 1 Altered Creation and won. It was fun.
Yeah, when you're playing the deck, it's like you're just bullying people or you're getting bullied. There's no like in between.
Definitely doesn't hold up well, especially like in the long game. Like if you don't win quick with ADP, like you're gonna lose. And I think other decks aren't as bad like that. I mean, I guess we've talked about Pikarom, talked about ADP. I think let's just move down to maybe a little bit, Zach. And one thing that I really wanted to mention is if we look at the overall results, especially if you just look at like if you go to standings and you just click, we're on Limitless right now, by the way, great website. If you just go to standings and you look at just the combined overall standings throughout the entire tournament, the meta actually becomes incredibly clear. In terms of which decks are the best decks. Of course, the top heavily populated by Pikarom and Blacephalon. Of course, that was like 7 of the top 8 decks. Makes sense. But then when you go farther, Zach, you see a lot. You see a lot of Luke Metal. You see a lot of Eternatus. And you see some Centiskorch and some Reshizard down there.
Yeah,
and some
until
Lightning
you see,
Mewtwo's
like,
as well.
for me, like, I see the only other deck that's not Luke Metal, or, like, any of the decks that we talked about, Peak, Luke Metal, ADP, Blounds, Eternatus, the first new deck is Mewtwo Lightning, which is basically, like, worse Pikarom.
I know.
Like,
cool.
every deck is exactly
fun.
the same at the same time. Like, we're talking about decks here, like, Blacephalon and Cracephalon are literally the Fire Toolbox deck that's also another deck. And, like, Eternatus is its own standalone deck, but Blacephalon, Cracephalon, Fire Toolbox are all very similar. Peak, Mewtwo Lightning are all very similar. Zacian, Luke Metal, and Zacian ADP are both Zacian decks. It's just one of those things where, like, our format is heavily revolving around the same cards, and the same cards are making it into different decks. Because, again, like, I feel like Blacephalon and Cracephalon and Fire Toolbox, all 3 combined are the exact same concept. It's just 100%. Like, it should just be a Welder deck.
That's exactly, and you're right. And if you look at it, Welder decks did very well in the tournament in general, and they should. Welder's a very powerful card. There's plenty of good fire attackers. I think that's kind of what hurts Centiskorch, to be 100% honest with you. It's a great deck, but it's hard to kind of not just focus around solely Centiskorch. And like for me, like I consider Blacephalon a better deck than Centiskorch, and
I mean, I agree with that to some degree. I mean, I think Centiskorch, now that the format's fully fleshed open, because I use Centiskorch to qualify for the Players Cup 2, for example, but that was Darkness Ablaze format. That wasn't this format. I felt like it felt a lot better because Luke Metal was much more played. Now that the format's kind of like, it's very cut and dry, and this is the same format we're going to be dealing until Battle Styles comes out. We're going to see Shiny Fades, but the set's virtually going to do nothing for our metagame, at least as far as I can tell. Like,
Kramer VMAX.
Is Cramorant VMAX even a card?
Yeah, they.
What?
Yeah, they're making Cramorant VMAX and I think Ditto V and VMAX.
I don't think Cramorant VMAX comes out in this set.
Well, it must be in one of the next.
It might be a promo box. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, I could be completely wrong here and just like completely talking out my butt.
I could be wrong. I know it's a
this
card.
This guy's literally inventing Pokemon like in front of me right now. This guy's lying so hard.
It's a card.
What does it even do? What does it even do, bro?
I think it does like 200.
I think it does like 200. Okay.
It does. It's got one attack. I can Google it.
They're
man.
also
it's a real card.
They're also making a Pikachu and Zekrom tag team VMAX. I think it does like 500. Yeah, I saw it. It's coming out, bro.
No, it's a real card.
That's how you sound. I mean, it could be real. I saw the Ditto VMAX coming out. I don't even remember what that thing does. I don't think it's that great. I think the Ditto V is pretty good.
No, I think V is cool. It might give more validity to like that Welder Aurora box deck that I love. But
just Welder decks in general. Like, but yeah, getting back to it. Like, I know we're getting way off hands. Yeah. Centiskorch is just like, why have. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. Basically, why have you have options or not have options? Centiskorch is very linear, and you're going to be doing the same attack over and over again. Now, you could steamroll over your opponents, and it becomes very powerful if you get to a certain threshold. But why would you not want to have like a Swiss Army tool knife kind of deck, in general, when there's no downside to having that? Sure, your deck might be like, oh, I prize this one attacker that I really needed. But at least you have all these cool different things you could do in different situations. And I'm always going to say that the decks that you have more options with are usually the decks that are better decks in general. Like, sure, linear decks typically do well. Like, we look at Eternatus. Eternatus is very, like, a... If you were new to the Pokemon TCG, Eternatus is easier to play than ADP. Like, you attach two energies and go right and attack and put Pokemon on your bench. It's some ASMR stuff as you lay the Pokemon down on your bench. But why have less options in your deck? And don't add options into your deck just to, like, ruin your deck list. But I mean, like, decks with more options are better. Mewtwo enhances Pikarom because it gives you why have 6 attacks when you could have 2 attacks? Like, it's a simple, like, just a simple premise. But
we've talked about it. We've talked about that. Putting Mewtwo and Pikarom just makes so much sense, and it makes the deck so much more viable. It's insane. But for me, like, I feel like I would pick Blounds over Centiskorch for, like, 2 options. One, because, like you said, it's easier to incorporate these other sort of, other attacking options and other cards in your deck. But also, like, you don't have to evolve, like, with Blounds. Like, you can literally just, like, you have Welder and Energy in hand. All you need is to just draw 1 Blound, right? And you can do that in 1 turn, whereas, like...
There's games that you don't find that Centiskorch at all.
Yeah, if you don't get Scorch out on turn 1, then, like, you're very, very much... hurt, whereas like with Blounds, like, you can get Blounds out in like turn 3 and just get a KO in 1 turn, right? So it's very different. I think both decks, Blounds of course struggles a bit more with like Swell and Marnie than maybe.
I mean, Welder decks in general all struggle against those cards. Like, I mean, if you talk to like our resident Centiskorch or Welder player, Cashman, he'll be like, he hates the Marnie card. He hates the reset stamp card. Like, he hates the chaotic Swell card. I mean, I don't think he enjoys seeing any of those cards against his deck. So, I don't know. It's one of those things where, like, no one's going to say otherwise. It's not just a particular deck. Like, Centiskorch hates those cards. When I'm playing against it, I hate those cards.
Yeah, dude, 100%. Like, I agree with you 100%, man. It's just strange. Like, to me, it's wild that Welder decks aren't winning all the tournaments, because in my eyes, like, Welder's like the most insane card of all time, especially in a format that's just like super all about fast pace. But to that point, Reshiram and Charizard has kind of made a comeback in the past week, Zach.
Yeah.
Like, what's your thought on that? We're not talking about just our normal Chill Series weeklies, but we did have a tournament last Wednesday with 220 players, and Reshiram won. So.
I mean, I think it's just when a new deck pops up, everyone goes to try it. We saw the Seeking deck do well at that one event, and I mean, that also caused some Twitter stirs. Shout out to iCaterpie for creating the deck. I mean, I think I'm not trying to be like whatever. I think that's the person who created the deck, Alessandro.
To be fair,
made the YouTube channel. It's tough to come up with content. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think that's the general point here. Like,
yeah,
there's decks that I feel
agree.
like I created and stuff like that. I'm sure there's decks where you feel like you thought someone created or something like that. It's hard to, because there's just so many players doing so much stuff. But anyways, Reshizard, I have no clue who came up with it first. If there's anyone who revived this concept, I'd say it was Simone. With his placement at, was it Hegster, or I think a while ago.
Remember.
It was one of the bigger like tournaments. It was either yours or Hegster's. He made top 8. Maybe he went on to win the turn. I don't. Whatever. Brought back Reshizard. I mean, I think it's okay. It just kind of goes that like tag team Pokemon are very good. Maybe it'd be worthwhile to revisit some of these other tag team Pokemon, because every single deck that's like, even if we look at like in the finals of this tournament, Peak's a tag team deck and runs 3 different tag team Pokemon with the Peak.
Yeah.
The
a total of
the Choo
of 5 or
Choo,
6.
the Raichu, and the Mewtwo and Mew, and then even in the finals, Kobe with Blacephalon ran Reshizard. I mean,
of course.
Again, we're talking about how decks are similar. Kobe's was like a streamlined version of this deck that ran less techs, but just made it more like refined, I guess.
No, 100%. I made a video, Zach, like a week or 2 ago, literally just talking about how tag team Pokemon are too good. And
you also check that out.
Yeah,
and subscribe to that channel. Subscribe. Maddie's so close to 1,000. If you're not subscribed to the channel right now, what are you doing with your lives, and why are you subscribed to the Lone Blonde as well?
That's true. Subscribe to both of us. We make great content, including the podcast. But that video, like the culprits were of course like ADP, Pikarom, Mewtwo, and Mew. But other things like Raichu and Raichu are crazy good. Reshizard, crazy good. Even like other cards that you just don't really think too much about.
Yeah, like if Zacian never got printed, Gardevoir Sylveon would have been like, it still would have been super played right now. It's literally just because they axed off fairy type Pokemon as if they don't exist. They're like that member of the family that we lock in the closet during the holidays.
Well, and it's so unfair too, because they were like fairy. We're not even making fairy cards anymore. But hey, also here's like the best card in the format that's just a metal type attacker. So good luck, have fun.
Well, and the thing is too, like Dragon Pokemon were the ones that they also axed off, and those were the ones that Fairy had an advantage over. So they're just like, hey, and to anything related, like Dragon Pokemon aren't going to have a weakness anymore, and Fairy Pokemon, you're weak to the best card in the format. Get wrecked, bro.
Sorry about it. Yes. Good luck.
Gardevoir's like, that's kind of sus. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is weird though, isn't it? If you think about it. Like,
are those the only ones that aren't played tag team wise? Because I mean, I think even like I qualified for the Players Cup in the 50 event things with playing even Charizard Breaks In. Like I think all these other cards.
That's a good point. Like, we need to talk more about Breaksard, because I feel like that card is busted and people just don't play it that much.
The reason why, and I mean, I think the reason why these welder decks are played, but they can't get past that next threshold, is because Picarom's a very good base for a Marnie reset stamp deck. Yeah. And that's the same reason why Charizard Breaks In is going to have some big struggles, is it's a deck that's susceptible to Marnie reset stamp on top of being a welder deck. So you search for all those cards and your opponent's like, that's really cool, Home Slice. Those cards are going to go right to the bottom of your deck. And then I'm going to paralyze you. And if you're not going to switch, you probably just lost the game, bruh. And then, I mean, that's literally, like, I could not write a better, like, Pikarom Breaksard fanfic. Like,
yeah. Fanfic. Yeah, no, I agree, dude. I agree. Like, if Marnie wasn't a card, Breaks In, or if Marnie and Stamp weren't a card, Breaks In and Charizard might be the best card, like, in the game.
I mean, I think Welder is probably just the best type in the game. Like, if Welder's not susceptible to those... Like, and there's so many things that are, like, even in Australia, like, I made the finals of the Australia Internationals with a welder deck. I had Lucky Eggs in my deck just to try to get over the Marnie reset stamp combo. And I mean,
I think I watched that match on.
I mean, I played terrible. Let's be real. I played so bad. The time zone got to me. The nerves got to me. The Italian food I ordered from Uber Eats the night before got to me.
The barometric air pressure.
But it's just one of those things where, like, welder decks are going to continuously trying to innovate, and it's just not... They just lose so hard to reset stamp and Marnie. If you're able to get around that, your deck's off and poppin'. And that's why they run cards like Jirachi, where other decks don't run Jirachi. They just throw extra consistency cards until they give us, like, another, like, Heat Factory or something like that. The deck's just going to, like, struggle It's just gonna struggle. Like, all these decks are based off the same deck. That's why, like, we can talk about Scorch and Blacephalon interchangeably. They're all the same deck. They all have the same matchup spread for the most part.
It's just different Pokemon. It's literally the same deck with different Pokemon.
And it's super cool. Like, I mean, those are my honest Arceus favorite decks. Like, I love me some Welder action. Like, I would play Welder every single day if I could. There's something about, like, drawing cards and attaching energies. It's so cool. But
it's busted, first of all. That's why Pikarom is also busted. Because whenever you can do damage and accelerate energy or draw cards and accelerate energy at the same time.
That's a huge, like, woo!
It's like, how can it not be good? You know, it is what it is. I mean, that's another reason my ADP is so good. Imagine doing 180 damage and accelerating 3 energy. It's literally just a better full blitz.
Just be like, cool, I checkmated you in the same turn, bro. I really hope that you can get 3 crushing hammerheads. Marnie reset stamp me. Like, ADP's put itself in some, like, right? Like, ADP, like, when it's about to win a game, it's about to win a game. And whenever you don't think they always have the boss. They always have the boss. If you have a second reset stamp, play the second reset stamp, because that's going to give you a better chance. Like,
yes. Yeah, honestly, though, to be fair, like, if you have 2 stamp in hand, just play them, because, like, that
who
first
cares?
stamp, like, if you stamp them to 2, they either have a boss, a Dedenne, or both. So, like, good luck with that. Or, like, a quick ball or something ridiculous. But
always.
And, you know, that's another thing, too. So, like, we'll get into the whole ADP ban situation. We'll talk about that and its impacts on the meta. I guess right now we're still talking about the 3K of the tournament. But we might have gone off on a tangent. But, yeah, I mean, I think moving back towards the tournament, you know, yeah, so I actually wanted to mention, so in the final, Zach, we did have Pikarom versus Blacephalon. Two different players. So there were 2 different players than there were in the first Chill TCG Tournament Cup, but the 2 same decks. And I think that's important to realize. Yeah, there might be some sort of a coincidence to it, but if you look at the top cut, 7 out of the 8 decks were those 2 decks. And for my money,
also,
I think,
like, if you were to look at it too, even for the Players Cup, if I wasn't able to get past Hugo, it would have been the same thing as well. It would have been Blacephalon versus Pikarom. Like, those
there were 2 peaks in Players Cup, right?
Yeah, 2 peaks, but I mean, if I didn't beat Hugo in the top 3 or however they work, the losers finals, Blacephalon would have advanced for sure. And I mean, I lost game 1. Like, the matchup, I'd say it's favorable for Peak more than, like, slightly favorable. It's favorable for Peak. Like, I'm sure Kobe did not feel great going in the finals. But
yeah, I understand. Like, whenever you're kind of forced to put Dedennes down or, like, Oricorios down on your bench, like, you can't feel good about the matchup, especially if, you know, they do, and it's best of 3, right? So, like, you're not going second at least once, maybe twice, right? So it's terrifying in that sense, to where if you're not going second against Peak and he does get that hot start, it's not looking good, man. Not looking good. But it's interesting. Like, people don't really talk about Blacephalon a whole lot. Like, it's one of those cards that, like only 22 people played the deck. Like, literally half as many people played it than either Pikarom or ADP.
Well, there gets a bad rep. That's why. It's literally, like, for the same reasons that I said over and over. People are just too scared to play Welder. And I mean, Welder's, like, I wouldn't even say it's, like, the forbidden fruit. Like, it's a pretty, like, bountiful fruit. Like, if you look at it results wise, I mean, I think it's pretty good.
Welder's off, dude. Welder is, it's up there with, like, Boss. Like, it's not a card you'd put in every deck like Boss, but, like, in terms of its importance to, like, winning and doing well for some decks, like, it's the best supporter out there.
Yeah, it's definitely a top 4 supporter, right? Like, there's no way, like, it functions for an entire deck. It is the best supporter for any kind of deck that can run Welder. Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like, whenever it's kind of like Boss or like Research, where, like, if you're playing it in your deck, which you probably are, then you're running 4 the most you can, because, like, your deck's gonna be based around those cards. And I think Welder's crazy. I don't know what's gonna happen when Welder and all those cards rotate, man. I don't.
Fire's probably not gonna be as good. Straight facts.
No. Can you imagine if they printed a Welder but it was electric energy?
Yeah.
Can you just think about it?
Like lightning Welder.
You know, you just call it electrician.
Electrician? Yo, I'm about an electrician so hard. That's popping. Like, 100%. Electrician.
Dude, imagine being able to just 3 in 1 turn on Pikarom every turn.
Yeah,
just full
but
blitz.
we gotta adjust for, like, the power creep. Shuffle your hand and drop the 5 cards. You may attach up to 3 water energies from your discard pile to this Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like something disgusting like that. I don't know. I mean, they got a bunch of cool stuff coming out. I feel like we're not going to see anything get printed. I think it's going to be a lot of like battle styles cards. Like just to go off like on another tangent, I think a lot of the cards are going to be battle style specific, or attach extra energy to your rapid strike or to your single strike Pokemon, stuff like that. Right. So I mean, I don't think we're going to see another Welder card, at least for like a few years. While
I think they might reprint it. I think they might reprint it before rotation. I think why not though, right? Because like they're gonna have to do something. Like they're not just gonna drop every fire deck off entirely. Like no one's gonna play fire without Welder.
But if they drop fire type decks off, that just like paves the way for other cards. Like
for a different meta. You're right.
Look exactly like Lapras Frostmoth. It's a pretty like synergistic combo, just like chilling behind the scenes. And I mean,
cool deck.
That could see some play. I know that Tablemon has been running some tournaments that are in the Sword and Shield on format. I don't think Frostmoth Lapras has been doing too well. We got the good unerrated Cinderace doing pretty okay. We got the Zacian decks doing okay. I don't know, but like I mean, I just think that like Lapras Frostmoth deserves a chance to shine. Like not to like even like pick a favorite deck or anything. I think the deck's like meh, but it's one of those things where like concepts like really that cool have deck. To kind of like creep in. Like Rillaboom would probably be a little bit cooler if fire decks didn't exist. So it just kind of creates this new metagame in fire decks. I think like they've been kind of at the top of the game for the past like 4 or 5 years. Maybe we could just give them a break for a bit, see what they look like in another whatever. I mean, there should always be a viable fire deck. But I mean, I think we're just kind of at the end of that reign, and I mean, maybe they'll reprint Welder and I'm just wrong, but
I mean, there should always be a viable deck for every type, realistically, but it never seems to be like that. And a lot of people like to say that ADP is like a gatekeeper, where it eliminates plenty of decks from the format. But can we just talk about how no grass deck right now is ever going to be a tier 1 or maybe even a tier 2 deck?
There's Azul the other day I saw, he was playing Rillaboom, right?
That is a good deck. Like, it's a great deck. But
I don't know if anyone played Rillaboom at the GG Tour tournament.
We had one. We had one make day 2, I thought. Maybe 9, actually. No.
I think there's Matthew Chow. Matthew
Chow always places very well with Rillaboom. He's a very good player.
Yeah. I mean, I got to film a video on Rillaboom this week because I feel like that's one of the decks I haven't covered. I got to look at Matthew's list.
We had 5 in the tournament. 5 Rillaboom Rowags. They went a total of 16, 21, and 3, so they had a 40% win rate. Again, it's a really good deck, but it's like when you're just going against 3 or 4 Welder decks throughout Swiss, then like
you're not beating the fire decks at all.
Exactly.
With that one. The weakness guard and energy, and I know some decks are like, I'm gonna play one weakness guard energy. Good luck. You have a better chance of turning yourself into a Mewtwo deck.
Agreed.
In my opinion, 100%. But
we had one Orbeetle in the tournament. But other than that, and then
Maddie's like, I paid this guy literally $10,000. To play Orbeetle because I'm an Orbeetle fan guy.
I am. It's a great deck. It's an awesome card. I mean, and then we also had like a total of 7 Decidueye decks, but that's different. Like you can't count that as like really a grass deck because I mean it's obviously a grass Pokemon, but it's immune to all VMAX and GX and V Pokemon. So it's
a safeguard. That's all. It's just like a different category.
Yeah. It is, exactly. So the typing of Decidueye doesn't actually matter. Like, it could be, like, any typing. It really wouldn't make a difference.
Obstagoon, Decidueye, and Altaria are all the same cards. Zamazenta is also in that category. It's just like Pokemon that, like, block. Bronzong's in that category. And, I mean, usually they come together to make some kind of toxic deck or something. I mean, it's not that toxic. It's pretty lowly rated. It will turn up, though. It could win in a couple weeks.
That's why, like, you just have to prepare for it. Like, once people forget about it, someone will play, sweep through a tournament, and they'll be like, oh, crap, yeah, I forgot. I got to put Stunfisk in my deck. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, like, I don't know. We're going off on another tangent. But Welder decks are crazy. And, again, I think Welder is a much bigger gatekeeper than ADP is for our standard format. And and it's actually crazy because, like, you know, Zacian decks are so good, and they're weak to fire still. So it's just ridiculous. Other typings that don't see a lot of play, like we have Colossal now, but Colossal, we had 7 in the tournament and went 38% for win rate. So we definitely need a better fighting type Pokemon, and there will be one coming out in Battle Styles. Me and Zach both made a video on the the leaked or announced cards from the new Battle Styles set. So we're not going to talk about it too much on the podcast, but if you guys are interested in the new set that's coming in March, then go check out our videos on our YouTube channels. Battle Styles is really cool.
Yeah, we both posted one on our respective channels too. So.
Yep, exactly. That's what. Yeah. So Urshifu VMAX is coming up. Both of them, I think they're going to be good. They're going to see play. They're going to be overall much more playable, I think, than Colossal. But I don't know if exactly it will remain to be seen as a a top contender in the format. So fighting, definitely struggling. Water type decks. Don't even get me started on water type decks right now. Pikarom laughs at any water type deck. I think the most that we saw play in the entire tournament was 2 Mewtwo, like Blastoise, like Frostmoth Mewtwo decks. And that was literally and then one
Galarian Darmanitan out there that 0-4 putting the team on the back, and then the team was too heavy apparently, and it went kerplat. But I mean, I think much to like the point is like it's either weak to metal or it's weak to water, which are the two best types in the entire game right now. Like they might as well make a third water type Pokemon that's weak to fire and just be like, we're shooting it behind the barn. Like it's so unfortunate. Like I like water type Pokemon too. I've won tournaments with Blastoise decks. Like I love that stuff. It's just not gonna happen. I mean, and I think I guess kind of putting it out there, like we could look down and start talking about individual decks. Like here we saw that there was like a Spiritomb player.
Spiritomb, baby.
I mean, I think Diego Casaraga is the one that played the Spiritomb player. World champion. Unfortunately did not finish off too hot. Went 3-3-1. Probably played it until and got the tie. I mean, you got to root for something like that. But kind of to sum things up here, I think if you're playing in any future tournament, if we could take anything from the results of GG Tour, Pikarom's the best deck, period. There's no denying this. If like Pikarom can get countered to the format, we might see a rise in Colossal to try to counter it. But Pikarom always finds a way to kind of prevail, and it just adapts to the formats and will change its techs up, whether it's playing Crushing Hammers or no Crushing Hammers. Doesn't matter. It's always going to adapt to the formats to become in a better spot.
Preach.
And then you have the Welder decks. I mean, I think Welder's very underrated, even though it came second, and it continuously proves itself as a top-tier contender. Kind of got a bit of a bad rep in the game, I think, where people just, like, dismiss it.
I'm not going to play.
Yeah, exactly. And you see, but you watch players, we brought it up before, but Cash turns up, wins these big events. He might go 3-4 drop the next tournament. He might go 5-6 drop. Yeah. I mean, Cash will tell you he's the unluckiest person alive on Twitter 99% of the time. But the other 10% of the time, he's winning the tournaments. He seems to win a major event per week, like online, like a 200 player event, a 100 player event. And he's one of those guys.
He's one of those guys that'll play in a tournament every day. And if the more you play, the more unlucky you get. So I mean, unfortunately, that happens. But the more you win, right? So, I mean, Cash is definitely one of those guys where sometimes he will go like 0-3 drop, but other times he'll go, 9-1 and win the tournament. So it's
huge.
I think Welder decks are just like that, like in general. Like I think Welder decks are just like that. So
yeah, I mean, I think if you know how you're doing with Welder well, and as long as you're picking it for like an appropriate meta, there's not like a bunch of like water decks or something that just directly counters you or like Bronzongs. Welder's the type of deck that you could probably win 1 in 5 tournaments. And don't try to quote me on that. I just mean like if you're playing in these like, don't play Welder in 5 tournaments and be like Zach Lesage said I could totally win a tournament. Like, homie, that's not gonna happen. And if you're listening to me like this, you're not the type of person that's winning the tournaments either. I hate to break it to you.
Oh wow.
But it's just one of those things. Like straight up, I feel like Welder decks are the type of decks that will bring you success. Just not all the time as much as Peak. Peak you'll consistently do well with Peak. Blacephalon can turn up. Stuff like that. Scorch can turn up. And I mean, I think we see it with players like Cash, our home slice, Thomas Brophy. Yep. They're the type of players, and you get the group of players. I mean, Tate Whitesell also has been playing Scorch lately. Saw some success, player. Right? Like,
yeah.
Welder decks bring players success. And if there's a third deck, I think you choose a Zacian deck or an Eternatus deck. That's the format. There's nothing else. I would not look below that.
You're right. You're right. It's like either you play Peak, you play Welder, or you play Zacian. And those by far are the 3 best like sort of meta types, archetypes in the game right now. You can get into specifics, but like you said, man, I mean those realistically, like if you're trying to win a tournament, it doesn't even make sense to not play those decks. Like, yeah, you might win with like an E-turn. You might win with like Decidueye if you get lucky, or like.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know,
Like if you tell me like Decidueye in like 12 days, yeah, sure, you could probably catch a bunch of people off guard. But that's like a strategy like you have to be very determined to do with Decidueye. Like if you're the type of player that's winning with Decidueye and you're making those kind of like metagame calls, you're also probably the same players that are winning these major events like Kobe and Legendary and Mike Fouché and all these other top players that are really doing well. Like these are the type of players that have Decidueye in their back pocket and they're like, you want to know what? It feels like a really good play today, right?
Yeah,
and you make it like I was like this close to playing Decidueye for the Players Cup too.
That would be crazy.
I sat through and went through with every single player. We weren't even supposed to know who qualified. Like, you got to look through the tweets, you got to look through the things, figure out what players are playing, going through all that type of stuff and making an informed decision. Had I played Decidueye, I would have got absolute bopped. It would have not been the play. But then you see players like Coquim. Yeah. I can never pronounce it.
Caquium. I call him Caquium, even though it's UIM. I just call him
it's a weird word to pronounce. Like if it was one of those like game shows where like pronounce this word correctly for $1 million, I'd be like,
or it's like you're on like the spelling bee, national spelling bee, and they're like spell Caquium, and you're like,
can you use it in a sentence?
Yeah, it's like,
and then Zach Cooper would be like, Caquium's hot.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, he did win that big tournament.
He won the tournament with Decidueye, right? You gotta pull that deck out from like it's in the shadows, like it's in a box. And you gotta unlock it and stuff, and there's like chains on that stuff. So like
you're like,
you gotta bring that stuff out. Like I'm telling you, like you summon Decidueye, and you gotta choose when it's going to win. You don't like the Decidueye deck will never win otherwise.
No, it's like in one of those glass boxes, and it's like break glass in case of GX or VPOK.
Yeah, something like that. Like you just have to like all stars have to align for that to happen. And I mean, I feel like you also got to play against a lot of underexperienced players as well. Like you got to be playing like against nowadays. I think a lot of Aegislash decks are doing well in the Decidueyes. I mean, just like in case you're like a Decidueye person, you're watching our podcast, and I appreciate you getting up to this point because I mean, thanks for helping our YouTube algorithm.
100%. Shout out to you.
I'm looking up here. If we look at the list here. Okay, so the top playing ADP list did not have a hard counter beyond Mawile GX. But if we scroll down here, we could look at you see that there's Michelle Schiraldi's list, did not have one. But if you look at Michelle Babin's list, you can see that there is the Aegislash sitting there. So 1 in every 3 ADP lists from what I've just looked at in real-time data.
Yep.
And I mean, I might have missed one. Zacian ADP and Zacian Luke Metal look exactly the same. So if I just pick them, this list does play Aegislash V, and it's one of those things where if we just go off simple things, if people are like, this list is better than the other ones or whatever, let's say they just split it down, like everyone splits into things if you run into ADP. Decidueye, 1 out of 3 ADPs will probably have a hard counter. I think is probably fair.
Yeah, and a lot of those welder decks, or at least Centiskorch that's running like Volcanion, you're gonna probably lose to. Yep. Even E-turn, like E-turn does run a lot of single price attackers, exactly. So it has a chance. And there's other decks like that. So whereas and it's funny because in every tournament there might be like a handful of people running Decidueye. So at any point, like if things were to just sort of happen like that, where it makes cut and cut is filled with, cards that it just can beat auto wins against, then yeah, it's gonna win. So it's one of those things where you don't know, and I don't know. It's one of those things you gotta deck.
I think it's a really hard deck. I don't think it's necessarily winning any of these like 200 plus player events. It's too long of a path to go up to the top and dodge things long enough. Exactly. A peak can sneak out a game versus Decidueye in best of 1. If you ask me if it's going to sneak a game out in best of 3, it's not going to happen, right? And the same thing could be said, like, Decidueye could sneak a game against ADP with an Aegislash in best of 1 Swiss at, like, the Chill TCG event. Right. But you're not getting it in 2 out of 3. The Aegislash is not going to be prized.
Exactly.
2 games in a row, and then even if it's prized, they're going to hit you with a Mawile one of those games. Like, something's going to happen.
Right, and a deck like that where it is very much based around luck and getting good matchups, then the more matchups you play, the less likely you are to get an easy pathway. So for big events like these, like if it's a 2-day regional online, regional style event, probably don't play Decidueye. Probably play something that is gonna consistently have a chance to win most matchups, which would be something like
Peak or Blacephalon.
Right.
I mean, again, we can go back in circles. I mean, I know we haven't talked about too much about ADP, and I literally just finished talking about it for Aegis/V. Why don't we talk about it for the Limitless, about what's going on there?
All right, so I mean, it all kind of started. Limitless had, I think there was some talks like on their Discord and such. Limitless, of course, not only are they the platform, the people that run the website that all these online events are used for. If you're watching this and you don't know what Limitless is, just go to limitless.com. One of the best websites. And if you're looking to play tournaments, it's play.limitless.com. Either way, they run their own tournament series, their weekly tournament series. It's one of the the most popular single day tournament series, right? They run every Friday or Saturday. I think they alternate, but of course, a very big name in the online tournament scene, and they have decided to go ahead and forego a ban for the card ADP Tag Team. And it's interesting, right? Because in this online meta, there aren't other tournaments, there aren't any other outlet to play competitively than these online tournaments. So, of course, these aren't ran by Pokemon themselves. ADP has not been banned by Pokemon. It's not a banned card in the standard format. But as Limitless is, they're a group of people that run their own tournaments. They have the right to make that decision to ban ADP. And they did a whole write-up on it. It's honestly like a 5-page essay, Zach. I don't know if you read
Did they actually do a write-up on it?
Oh, yeah. Very big write-up.
I've not read that. That's going to be...
Yeah.
I'm going to have to read this through here.
Very big write-up. People like Robin from Limitless, who are great players, and people like...
yeah, let's legitimately
Tetreault.
Robin is a world champion.
Yeah.
It's one of these things players at the absolute top of the game. We could talk about myself winning the Players Cup too. I don't have an opportunity to win a Worlds this year, or even play in Worlds this year. Not to say that I'm a player that will ever win a Worlds. I can sit out here and hope. Robin's actually gone through and done that. So a player that's gone through, also international champion. We could go through the...
Yeah.
One of the best players in the game made this decision, so it's interesting.
And also, I think Tetreault works with Limitless, right, or works for them. He's part of their...
yeah, Limitless is kind of a team/organization. It's hard to pinpoint where it is now because they're such a crutch for our community.
Right. Either way, a very, very impressive and a very legitimate organization of players has decided to ban ADP for their tournament series. They're only doing it, I believe, for the month of January, so it's a temporary thing. They're going to test it out. But Zach, listen, I don't know. Can you pull up that tweet? It has a lot of likes, that tweet on their Twitter. It's what...
Going to twitter.com.
It's one of those things where, I'm sure a lot of people who are diehard ADP fans, people who consistently play ADP, might be upset about it. But at the same time, it got just an overwhelming amount of positive feedback. And, one thing that I found interesting, Zach, was that as soon as Limitless announced this, everybody was sort of tagging and mentioning other tournament organizers, such as myself, Hexters, sort of asking or presuming that we would also be banning the card ADP in our weekly tournament series. And
now I see exactly where I missed this part. I just thought it said play.limitless TCG. I did not see resources ADP. This is something I'm definitely got to read into. I feel like I didn't do my homework and I'm caught here with
No, you're good. It's very long, and they they covered pretty much everything that they could have covered. I think the overall consensus was that ADP wasn't dominating the format like we always talk about. It's not the best deck right now by a long shot. But what it is a deck that a lot of people play. It's an overwhelming majority of the current meta share, and it's a deck that most people do not enjoy or feel is healthy for the game in a competitive aspect. And I can understand that. I have my own stance on sort of banning ADP, whether it should be banned or not. I'm not here to criticize Limitless. I'm just here to sort of discuss this decision. And I think it's important for us to just cover what we think will happen or what this means for
just
meta.
So before anyone gets out here and they're like, Zach and Maddie hate Limitless or anything, or they love Limitless. We're... First and foremost, we're not associated with Limitless or anything like that. We both run events sometimes. I mean, Maddie runs them all the time. I run events sometimes. But it's one of those things where, we both use the play.limitless TCG website and the Limitless TCG. I think everyone in the community would say that Limitless does a great job of providing for our community, especially during this pandemic. Anything about this is just out of pure respect for just the sake of discussion. Nothing here is meant to be
again,
against a particular
sort of a big thing.
decision or with a particular decision. So I just want to make sure that that's like super clear before we get into anything, because I just don't
Right.
want there to be like any like controversial things that get said and it's just like Maddie hates Robin Scholes or anything like that. Like
Yeah, I don't need any of that. in
all
my
these
life.
players like 100% like they're way up there in my books. I think they're absolutely amazing with everything that they do. And I mean, a decision like this, I think is as Danny would say, it takes some stones.
It
There's
does.
some big stones out here, and I mean, my thoughts on ADP. I mean, I agree with them for the most part that ADP is a gatekeeping deck.
Yes.
When I was out there playing Mad Party, I full felt the first hand measures of ADP is they're absolutely bonesing me. Like I'm getting absolutely like, destroyed by this ADP deck.
Yep.
How can my single prize card fun deck thrive? And I think the point is, how many decks do we want in format?
Right.
Like it comes down to like we see that there's Peak, Lightning Mewtwo. Like a lot of these decks are similar, but they're different. At least as Limitless organizes them, right? Like Cephalon, Reshazard, Eternatus. Like, do we want 100 decks doing well? I mean, that sounds fun to me, but it just makes it also a little bit more random. I think ADP's not the strongest deck in the format. I don't think that ADP is winning many online events. Like, let's put it in perspective. You're on your Chill Season 2, right?
Yeah, we're on. So this Wednesday is our 14th tournament.
Okay. So how many ADP decks have won your Chill tournaments?
We've had one. So here, I actually looked into this, like just to kind of get a good sort of base, right? I mean, ours is it's just one of these weekly tournament series. We've done 13 so far. We've had one ADP win a tournament, and I think it's made finals 3 or 4 times, and only won once. So,
I mean, I don't like those odds don't sound good, but like then we look at things like the major events where we literally talked about it. We had the Players Cup 1, the Players Cup 2, or sorry, not the Players Cup 1. We had the Chill Cup 1. We had the Chill Cup 2.
Yeah, the GG Tour regionals and then
GG
the
Tour
Players
regional
Cups,
style events. And then we had the Players Cup 2 ran officially by Pokemon. And we had Peak. And to me, I'm just like, I feel like the decision is too light in a way. I think it'd be much better if we were to ban 3 prize card Pokemon. I think that'd be so much more interesting to the point where the metagame would actually change. Here as a Peak player, and I mean, I know I played Mad Party and that was a mistake and we could all meme about that. But
You're
I mean, going
player.
forward, I'm a Peak player and
100%.
I'm like, cool, ADP is the one deck that I lost to in the Players Cup because that's the one matchup that no matter what I do with the Crushing Hammers, hit them with the Tandem Shock, ADP can sometimes sneak out of it. They're a slippery deck and they got out of my grasp. And they just took away one of the most difficult, slightly favorable matchups for me. I don't know what kind of the metagame puts it like. I don't know what's really going to change about it. But the way that I look at it, like it's kind of like what's the movie Butterfly Effect? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Where it's just like if we introduce some kind of new species or take out a species from our metagame, which would be the ecosystem, what happens? And I think when you start doing things like that, that's when you start getting things that you might not want to see. And I think that just means that Peak is probably, to anyone who wants to play competitively, Peak also had a League Battle deck, so it's fairly easy to put together for the most part, I'd say.
Very true.
I mean, Bolton's expensive as all heck.
But it's also like a card that... Yeah, and it's also a card that, like, for a long time wasn't that expensive, right? So, like, a lot of people might just have it.
Yeah. My buddy hadn't played for a while, and I was like, bro, do you have Boltons? He had a full playset that he picked up for, like, virtually nothing when they were literally nothing.
Exactly.
But it's just one of those things, like, I don't know. I just feel like the metagame's like, cool, it's now 50% Peak.
That's what I thought originally, but I don't know about that, right? And that's what I kind of want to discuss. For me, and I want to touch on this, I don't believe that the problem with sort of ADP is the fact that it exists. I think that the main problem with ADP is the fact that it's so highly played. If we had 10, 15 people play ADP in this 265-man tournament, no one would care. It wouldn't even. You might run into it once in Swiss, maybe twice, but like it's not going to be an issue. But when you run into 3 or 4 ADPs in Swiss, it's the most played deck every tournament. Then it becomes an issue because people are like, well, this deck it's not right. That in its own right isn't healthy for the game. I think sort of the whole idea with ADP, and I've said it multiple times, it's very accessible. It's a very easy to play deck, and that's the reason why so many people play it. But for me, I don't think the problem is that the deck exists. I just think that people are gonna play the deck too much, and we can't stop people from playing what they want to play, other than banning the card for the most part, right? So I think that's mainly the issue. The amount of ADP, the popularity of it, not so much how good it is, or necessarily, that the card breaks the game. I mean, it kind of. I feel like you know what I mean.
Maybe like. Like my first kind of like real argument, like when you think about it, like I could talk here as a competitive player. Let's talk about like is from a different aspect. Like I went to the Walmart the other day. Walmart, like right now, Ontario where I live is in a full
busted Walmart
28-day lockdown where literally only essential services are open to help again curb the spread of COVID. So I mean, safely, socially distant, mask required, everything, all that. I walked down to the Pokemon section because they can still sell the Pokemon stuff. I know some stores,
right.
Whatever. Yeah. The only 2 Pokemon products they had left were 2 ADP decks, the League Battle decks. And it makes me wonder, I'm just like, how many kids got ADP decks for Christmas? Maybe it's a struggling financially family. Time's been tough for some people. I mean, I've had 100%. Some good times. I definitely had some times where I'm like, dang, I guess we're having Mr. Noodles again today. Like, for real. Like, I'm just being straight up honest. And it's one of those things where, like, how many kids opened up ADP and now they're upset because Limitless decided to ban it? They can't play their shiny new deck. I mean, Limitless is, I'd say, probably less than 10% of the tournaments on their own website. So they could probably play ADP 90% of the time. But if I'm a kid and Limitless is the one that's running the website, and Limitless typically bring the biggest events on average for the amount of tournaments that they run. They run 1 tournament a week, and they're always hitting like 200 plus. I mean, it certainly helps that they're free and sponsored events.
Yeah, but like you said, hundreds of people playing these tournaments every week, and now a lot of those people who every week, religiously,
they lost their deck.
ADP, they lost their deck.
Someone could have literally the other day picked up all the remaining cards for their ADP deck, and now they cannot play their deck. And I mean, if that was me, that's like, if I fixed my car up and got it all up, and then they're like, your car can no longer be driven, Zach. We're only going with electric vehicles. And I'm like, I wish I had a little bit more of a heads up. And I mean, I guess this is what online, like we talked about it being the wild, wild west. I just feel like maybe even like limiting it at first might have been interesting, where they went on a thing where they're like, 1 ADP can only be played per deck. And then in your ADP, like in a deck that plays ADP, you could only play 2 Zacian V. Something like that.
That would be so interesting, first of all. Because at that point, people, of course, would still play ADP, but it wouldn't...
They still have access to their deck. Their deck's a little... Right. It's hindered for sure. Like, it has a broken ankle or something. It's wobbling. It's out there. But you could still play your deck. And if that's the only deck that you have online... I just don't want I don't want anyone to be in a position where they're like, ADP is the only deck that I have online. I feel like I can't play in Limitless tournaments, period.
Right. And I think the best thing that we can do, and of course, like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have banned ADP. Like, of course, it's temporary. They're trying it. And I'm grateful for them to be the ones that do try it.
Seriously, applaud to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things, as a tournament organizer, you haven't done that. I haven't played in a banned ADP tournament or anything like that. I think it's one of those things where it's we can applaud their decision to, like, it's a brave decision.
100%. For me, like, it's one of those things where, like you said, there are going to be those people that are ADP players that are upset about it. But the overwhelming majority of the community and the meta people that don't like dealing with ADP, of course, they're going to be very happy about it, and they're going to express their gratitude, like on Twitter or on social media. Whereas those people who play every week ADP get criticized for it. They might be like, I don't feel I'm comfortable, or I feel like, they might feel uncomfortable reaching out and expressing that opinion on Twitter right now, or on
because
on
you're
YouTube,
just gonna get flames. You're literally the exact opposition. It's not. I don't think Twitter is really a safe place nowadays to have kind of a differing opinion, especially when you're going up. Like, I know I've seen it for myself, but there's kind of this mob mentality, especially with online. A lot of people have way too much time on their hands.
Yes.
And I mean, I feel like if I made a legitimate post and I was like, and wrote down all the reasons here, and was just totally cool about it. Like, at the end of the day, I don't play ADP in tournaments. I haven't really played ADP in tournaments. And I don't think it's necessarily going to affect me, right? You got an ADP deck though right there.
I keep it. Yeah, for people listening to the audio podcast, I keep a fully built ADP deck on me at all times because
Break in case of any time. They're like, pandemic's over. Maddie's like, I'm ready to duel. Like, jeez, homie. This guy has a built deck, and it's 2020, about to be 2021. This guy has a built deck in real life. Who you playing with, bro? You playing with yourself. You playing with yourself, bro.
Yeah, I play with my wife sometimes, and I'll be fair. And listen, like, this is funny, and this might be interesting to some people. And it's not to knock anybody. My wife, she plays because I've taught her how to play. It's something that we do together, and it's just fun. She knows I love to play, so she plays with me because she's a great person and a great wife. She doesn't know a lot about Pokemon. She doesn't play regularly. She doesn't follow the meta. She just sort of knows the basics of the game. And whenever we play, Zach, she plays ADP. That was
you want to
partially...
know, like, just like ADP is like the best way I put it. It's a TV dinner deck. If you don't know, like I'm a professionally trained chef, but sometimes when I go to the grocery store, they have those meal kits or even a frozen thing, and I cook them, right? So no knocking on ADP. No knocking on whoever's playing ADP. It's one of those things where the deck is slightly easier. Like, it's a step-by-step deck, and that's why it's probably getting. But I'll let you continue.
Okay. Yeah, no, and for me, and I just want to touch on this, as a fellow tournament organizer, as one of the more... I got to be careful how I say this. As one of the more played tournaments, online tournaments right now.
You're more popular. It doesn't... I mean, I don't think anyone needs to... You're more popular than a lot of these tournaments like we see out there. There's the newer upcomers like the Funny or Fuzzy Bunny or whatever. Like, there's tournaments like that they're new. You've been around for 3-4 months. You deserve your applaud the same way we're applauding Limitless. It's one of those things, like, I think we need to be... It's 2020. It's been a pretty garbage year for most people. Bask in your success, bro.
All right.
You're a more popular tournament. I'll say it for you. You're a more popular tournament. You gotta... Your opinion might matter a little bit more than others.
Okay.
Go with it.
So to that point, as somebody who runs tournaments, I personally don't feel comfortable banning a card or telling people that they cannot play a certain card or play a certain deck in my tournaments. And as I went to Twitter and as I tried to discuss this with some people, Zach, it was very difficult for me to defend my stance of not wanting to ban ADP without kind of sounding like an ADP apologist in one way.
Sure.
Because I do agree with so many sentiments that people express online about the deck and how it affects the meta. But somebody in my position, I just don't feel like I have the right, even as a tournament organizer and somebody who puts all my time in to run these events, I personally don't feel comfortable telling people what and what not to play. To that point, I would like to express to everybody who is playing in my weekly tournaments that maybe, if you are one of those people that play ADP every week, it's your only deck that you really have built, that's a quality deck, and you enjoy playing it, it's the only deck you like, then go ahead, play it. I'm not going to tell you can't play because that's your deck, but for a lot of those people that do have other decks built, that enjoy and know how to play other decks, they just, to those people, I would say, please limit the amount of ADP that you play. Not only is it going to improve the overall the overall experience for a lot of the players in the tournaments, but it's also going to make the meta healthier. And I think that, for next tournament, instead of getting 30, 40 ADPs, if we just had 15, 20, things would be much, much more enjoyable for most of the players. And
sounds like a good ratio. So, I mean, I guess to kind of like explain it in a different way from what I can understand, in a world where ADP is banned, you are decriminalizing the use of ADP, but there might be a bit of a frown here and there from people who do not like ADP. So, and
right.
Got it. I mean, that's cool. Go out there and flaunt it if you got it. And if if you have and you got some other stuff built, that's cool. Like, we all understand where it's like to be like, I only got one deck built. All I got was the ADP League Battle deck for Christmas. My homie gave me a Crobat V. And you're like, you want to know what, bro? You could be one of the 10 ADP players for this tournament. We appreciate you showing up and donating your 2 packs to the prize pool, and best of luck in the tournament. But for the rest of the peeps, if you want to, whatever, you're like, you don't really care too much at the end of the day. But for the overall enjoyment of your tournaments, you think it's a little bit better to try to limit wherever possible.
Right. It's more of a suggestion, and I think that that's a good place to start. But I think it's important for us, Zach, and you especially as an experienced and high level player, like you said earlier, like you think there might just be 50 peaks in the tournament. Do you think that that's actually what it'll happen, or do you think that
I
most of those?
actually don't know.
I think there might be a lot of Luke medals, personally, just because there is such a wide
I think
variety.
Luke Metal always beat ADP. If anything, like you got to look at the decks that ADP was. I wouldn't necessarily like. It's a slightly favorable matchup for Peak, but and it's like BUT capitalized letters.
Yeah.
ADP can sneak out of those pretty quickly to the point where I'd say like that's a matchup I'd like to avoid because that one's a little bit of a.
It's up in the air.
It's
like,
a
no
wild
what.
card, right? Like no matter what,
right.
no matter how good your start is, they could just be like, "Cool, I got the boss, I got the this, I got a few crushing hammerheads." Because ADP is a fairly toxic deck, and I mean, I think Peak is probably more of a toxic deck if you ask me. Peak takes a lot more skill to play than ADP, 100%. Like up there, like 100%.
Yes.
But when played perfectly, the deck is just like you are cutting people out of games more than ADP does. It doesn't look like it's doing it. ADP does it straight up in front of you. Peak is sneaky behind your back, shoots you from the inside of the house bad.
He's like, you think you're doing fine, but I have
the game's
Coco
been wrapped up
Boswell.
since, as soon as I used Electrify, the game was completely over. I'm glad that you thought it was more fun and enjoyable gameplay.
Right.
I honestly don't know what's going to happen, to be honest. I haven't even thought about it. I due to my schedule in life, I haven't been able to play in any of these limitless tournaments. I would like to play in the limitless tournaments.
Yeah.
But playing in I think it actually does nothing for me. So, for example, I've never played in a Chill TCG weekly tournament. I really want to. I've played in every GG Tour cash tournament because that's what really excites me in the game. I'm kind of in a position where I can't necessarily find the value in playing for online packs. I mean, I totally see where players want to look for their whatever. Yeah. For me, it's just not.
Especially,
I don't get excited enough for it. Like that's me. Like I need to get. I'll play in the Hexters on Mondays because I feel like I disappoint peeps if I don't stream, or I disappoint myself if I don't stream once a week. It's the holidays. I haven't been able to stream. Get at me another time, whatever.
That's what's important is like, Zach's available on Mondays and he puts that time into play. For some of you, if it's a Thursday, then maybe you play in the Stone Series, or if it's on Saturday, you play in Limitless.
And it happens to be Wednesday. No shameless plug here. Anyways, it's one of those things where like I have a team challenge coming up. I mean, I know we haven't talked about the team challenge. This podcast isn't about the team challenge. I'm going to use either tonight or tomorrow, depending on how I can free up my schedule. I'm going to play in a tournament to try to practice for my team challenge. I feel like tournaments add a certain valid, it's valid testing because you're playing against players who paid some kind of entry, whether it's packs, cash, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna try my best to see whatever. I'm gonna treat it seriously. The one thing that I find very difficult is Pokemon's still running official events at this time, and the official events are the team challenge and the Players Cup tournaments. I mean, the team challenges is full underway, and I mean, check out the thing if you haven't figured out. Ask us below in the comments. Maybe we'll do a section or whatever. Players Cup 3 is coming up in January. Our metagame isn't changing, basically. There's Shiny Fates that gets introduced in February, but not for the first little bit of January for the Players Cup.
People will have some blinged out decks.
Yeah, exactly. People got some cool decks, sure. But if I were to play in a Limitless tournament, I can no longer look at their tournament for an accurate representation of the metagame.
Of the metagame, and exactly. And to me, that was a lot. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. That was a big point.
No, you're good.
That was a big point for me. No, you're good. That was a big point for me, a big aspect when people brought it up, because Chill TCG is not only a tournament series, but where, I don't want to say an organization. It's really just me, but we're somebody who makes content on YouTube. We make posts on Twitter. A big part of what we do is we analyze the current standard meta, and we use our tournament series as a platform to do so. Right? That's a lot of where our time and content comes from. Is sort of reflecting on the current online standard meta and the format. And for me, somebody who makes content and observes the standard meta, I don't feel like banning ADP would be an accurate representation of what the actual standard format is right now, and it would just make a lot of things more complicated for me as a content creator as well. So
sure. For me, I feel like there's that other organizer. Is it Vixen?
Yeah, Vixen.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm terrible at pronunciating. Like, if you got something, let us know in the comments below, and like, yell at me in the DMs or something like that. Like if I butcher it.
I'm terrible at names.
But I look at these tournaments and I mean, I feel like making a decision like that, not to sound so harsh, it's the same thing as like running the Mew World Order tournaments or the 30-0-30. It's formats that don't exist. And we're in a format that doesn't exist until Pokemon makes it exist. And maybe Pokemon's out here being like, oh, Limitless has more stones than us. And you want to know what? We're going to ban ADP. But for me, like, I think right now, the way that I would look at it is ADP is not a deck that wins too often. I mean, I think its win rate is usually 50-50. It's a really good entry-level deck for players who are jumping into the game because there's that brand new League Battle deck. Like, I literally went to Walmart the other day. They're on the shelves right now. Like, it's not like it's one of these sought-after products that the scalpers are getting. It's not super valuable to them. It's a great way to enter the game.
The Peak ones, that one, it had 4 Jirachis. Dude, I mean, when that came out, bro, I was like, I need 2 of them because it came at the time. It had Jirachis.
Jirachis are hot. Like
so, at the time, oh my god, I know. Plus, you had the Peaks, and they had the Trainer Toolkit coming out at the time with Dedenes. I was like, dude, this is unreal.
You could build a full functional Pika-ROM deck by spending $100 at Walmart
or less. Yeah,
$100 or less.
Right, which is crazy.
I mean, up north, everything's like there's like a 30% tax on top of everything, on top of there being a 30% like US to CAD ratio. So like, I feel like I'm absolutely like someone's making some money off me, but
But yeah, no, I know what you mean, and right now, like, that's the thing, like, they put out this ADP League deck, but for the most part, like, everyone had that deck. Before they released this, we had 30% of the meta share playing ADP, so most people had this deck. That's what they were playing.
Sure.
And I know for me, like, when I first got into PTCGO, what was the first deck I built, Zach?
Probably ADP. I don't know.
It was ADP. Yeah, it was ADP. Because I was like, listen, I mean, I know I can win games with this. I can climb the ladder efficiently. I could compete if I wanted to. I played it at POG, that first POG championship, months ago, and I went like 5-1 and then had to drop. But anyways, I was rolling, dude, and I was like, ADP's it's gas.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think ADP is cool for a lot of players, and I mean, players are playing ADP for a reason. And for the players who are not playing ADP, I don't think the players care about that too much. I don't think the players who are playing Galarian Darmanitan care too much about ADP either. I think that necessarily, like, the decision, I actually don't know who it affects, because I think it only negatively affects the players that like playing ADP for whatever reason. I think ADP is, like...
I think it's hard to target the individual that it impacts. I think that if you look at, like, after this Limitless tournament series, I think that the middle, like 32 to 64 decks, will be very different, because I think that's where ADP dominates for the most part. Like from like the middle, I think there's a lot of ADPs that are just sort of in that like 50-50 range where they go like 4-4, right? I think that's where the majority of them fall. I think if you look at the top 8s and the top 16s of these tournaments, not much will change. You're still going to see.
I just don't know what's keeping out of the format at this point. Like, I feel like everyone's still pretty out and open. I mean, but Mad Party still had 8 people playing it, right? Like, yeah. I mean, Galarian Darmanitan was still played. Like, I don't think we're going to see, like, Galarian Darmanitan decks show up en masse, because you want to know why? Like, there's still weak, that's the one that's weak to Metal, right?
Yeah, Luke Metal is terrible.
Luke Metal's still a deck. I mean, Turbozation could also just be a deck. Like, there's nothing that stops us from playing Leon, Zigzagoons, all this extra space now. Who cares about extra prize cards? I'm going to go Zacian, Intrepid Sword, rip you to shreds. I think Zacian's more of a problem than ADP.
I agree with that. In some ways.
I think ADP is kind of cool in other decks. Like, I know there was a time where there was, like, ADP Bird Trio, because Frank Perchik and the Undaunted homies came out with that.
I saw that one.
Deck, right? Like, and I thought decks like that are, like, ADP does not feel...
ADP Lapras?
It feels super cool, right? Yeah,
ADP Lapras?
ADP Blounds, ADP Pika. Like, I mean,
there's a lot.
No, but there's some people that came up with some cool ADP decks. Like, I remember even last year, ADP Guzzlord. That was cool, trying to draw extra prize cards. And, like, I think as a content creator, I've made a few ADP videos covering these decks, and I thought they were, like, they did not feel overpowered or necessary of a ban. If there's cards that I felt that were necessary of a ban right now, I would say Crushing Hammer, Reset Stamp. Those are cards like... Those 2 cards come to mind 100% first.
It's a fine line, because for me, and I've talked about this so much as somebody who runs tournaments and stuff and analyzes the meta. For me, if we ban hammers, then it does the opposite effect, where ADP becomes a little bit crazy. I think most people run hammers as a solid check for decks like ADP, and other things like E-Turn and such. So I think banning hammers, although would make the game much more less based on luck, which I think is good. ADP would just have a little bit too easy of a path. And I think that's tough. I think, honestly, the smart move, if we were to do this, is you keep ADP, but you ban you ban hammers, and you ban boss. That's just me personally.
Yeah, boss is pretty.
Because are you really gonna play? Like, what is ADP gonna do if it can't consistently?
I guess if you're banning
bench?
boss, then you also have to ban Pokemon Catcher. I think Pokemon Catcher would also be terrible in a world without boss.
Well, do you think ADP is really gonna run 4 hammers and 4 catchers?
Yeah,
just flip coins all day.
100%. If you ban boss tomorrow, ADP is running Pokemon Catcher 100,000%. There's no way.
Yeah, but
I would literally bet.
Though,
I would bet whatever you want me to bet on that one. ADP is running catchers. Otherwise, they're not even a functional deck.
Right, but it would limit the deck. Was what I'm saying. If they have 4 guaranteed gust in their deck instead of 4 gusts that only hit 50% of the time.
I feel like that's the point where I think Crushing Hammers is a flawed card because it doesn't automatically hit. If Crushing Hammers discard 2 cards from your hands, you automatically get the energy. That's 100% valid to me. I feel like my opponent could also run that. I mean, I think that's a cool card. And we've seen other things like energy removal and stuff like that, where you just pick off the energy and base it. Yeah. We're in a power creep. Why do we not have the same cards?
You know what would even be better too, because it's discard the energy, but things like Team Yellgrunt, you put the energy back in hand. That's honestly pretty fair. Things like that new Billowing Fan that's coming out in Battle Styles.
I think Billowing Fan, putting it at the bottom of the deck, I think that card's awesome.
That's awesome, dude. Imagine if Hammers was that instead of just discard this energy. It would not only it would just make the card less toxic. It would still be annoying as heck, but it would make it a lot less, I think, just impactful on the overall game. The pace would still be impacted, but if you're only running 2 waters and they get hammered off 2 turns in a row, it's like, cool, I'm just going to forfeit. Whereas if they go in bottom of your deck or back in your hand, things are a little bit less different. Yeah, man, I think banning ADP, I think that it's going to be cool. I think that, I'm glad somebody's doing it. I'm super interested to see how it goes. I think everybody will be tuning in to that Limitless page to check the meta. I think we'll all be making videos about it just to kind of
just to see exactly what they're the ones who are doing it. I mean, we're going to see exactly what the results of the tournament. I know I won't be able to look at it for the team challenge or the Players Cup as a competitive player, as my own self, but as the lone Blown content creator, the Yellhorn. I think
it'll be interesting.
Chill TCG, we could look at it as a content creator and then put it, because my opinion is Zach Lesage is different as the opinion of the lone Blown.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that's something where it's the same thing for you. Here at the Yellhorn, we have we're pretty unbiased, I'd say. Sure, it's throw some love here. There's GG Tour, throw some love here. There's Chill TCG, the lone Blown. We could talk about those 3. After that, I'd say we're pretty unbiased towards everything else. We just want people to we have our available platforms and we have sponsors. After that, everything's out in the open, and I think we're pretty just try to be straight up about that. And love for Limitless, but that their decision, no matter what it would be, whether they banned it, did not ban it, it's flawed. Maddie's decision as a tournament organizer, no matter what, is flawed because we have no way to determine what it is. There's no way to determine if it's the right decision or the wrong decision. Limitless is just foregoing all of that and just saying we're gonna go with our decision
and try it out. Right. And
right,
like I said, it's not permanent, right? So they might just stop doing it after January. But that being said, for those of you who are regular players in the Limitless Online Tournament Series, the tournament results will not be counted towards the PokeStats Invitational rankings since it's not official standard format. And
Did
other
PokeStats
rankings such
announce
as that. Well, I've heard that from them directly. I don't know if they've published.
Okay, I haven't checked out anything out of that. I was going to ask about that when I got a chance with the PokeStats peeps, just to see. I mean, I'm not going for any PokeStats invitation. I don't have enough time.
Yeah,
I don't know how some of y'all playing 7 tournaments a week or 14. I feel like Cash is playing 20 tournaments a week right now. I feel like
right, but for those people who are all about that Limitless or that the PokeStats Invitational, the seasons. If that's their main concern when they're playing and their main goal, then that might be something for them to realize, right? So, we'll see. I think that it's really important as a format right now and as a community that is entirely based off online events. This is pretty big news, and it could be the first step for the overall PTCGO community to fall into. So we'll see, right? I mean, you heard it here first. We could be wrong. Maybe the format's going to be entirely more enjoyable. Maybe the game is better, than maybe Pokemon bans it themselves. But, for now, these are definitely our opinions, and I think that we were pretty. I think that we were pretty conservative in what we said about it, and I also think that what we said is pretty correct.
I mean, I want to I'd also like to open the floor. Like, if you're in the Chill TCG Discord, if you're in either one of our YouTube video comments, or if you're commenting on any other service that allows us to view the comments, we want to know your thoughts on the ADP ban.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I think that's really where I think that's where I want to leave it. I just want to know other people's opinions. Maybe we could maybe it's an open discussion. If someone has a really cool opinion, we could bring them on the cast or something like that.
100%. I think that's a good point too. As we wrap up here, I think it's really cool. So that's another thing we've thought about, who we could possibly bring on as a guest on our podcast. I think it was a good idea for us to just have it just us at the beginning, so people got familiar with us and who we are. But in the future, if there's anybody in particular that you would like to have, for us to have on the podcast, who you would like to hear
everyone.
From, we do. It's a small community. We're all friends. If we ask somebody to come on, they'll come on. Everyone's very nice if they can make it,
I hope
of course.
So.
Yeah, unless they can't, right? But
we might be talking at our butts right here. They might be like, "We hate those guys.
No,
we're not
I
going
think
on their podcast. We're not wasting an hour of our time."
No, I think they will, man. I think.
You want to what? So put the people if you want on there. Like if you want I don't know.
The Carps and Rats guys. If you want Azul, if you want Mellow Carp, if you want
they were in our DMs.
Yeah, no,
we've been lightly talking about some stuff. So I mean.
Little Dark Fury is one person who's reached out and expressed his interest. Somebody who casts our GG Tour tournament. Somebody I mean, they also run some of the craziest, zaniest decks ever. Maybe they have an opinion on the ADP ban.
You just let us know what questions you want us to ask some of these guests. Let us know some questions you might have for us. Maybe you're like, Maddie, where did you go to high school? Zach, where do you live? What's going on? Like, I don't know what you want to ask. Like,
keep it PG. Keep it
PG.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. That's another thing too. Is like as we both kind of grow on this as content creators, as sort of people in the community. There's more people that really are interested in who we are, not so much what we have to say. And that's always an interesting thing too. If people want to just get to know us both more as people, then I'm totally cool with that. Of course, I believe probably most people are just interested in hearing us discuss the latest news or talk about the meta. I think that's probably what we have most to offer, but we are real people, right? So if you're interested in who we are and sort of, that whole aspect of us, then just let us know, because we can go into that stuff as well. We went in pretty deep here, Zach, for episode 2.
I think so.
But I loved it, man. I love every second of it. Whenever we get on here and we get rolling on a topic, man, I could go forever. It's just...
Yeah, 5-hour podcasts. I mean, people doing road trips in these things, right? Listen to the whole thing. But
that's right. People get 3 days.
That's what there's next week for. I mean, now that we're kind of getting a little bit over the holidays, and it doesn't fall so awkwardly with our timing.
Right. It is a weekly podcast.
Yeah, it is a weekly podcast. I mean, we even attempted to do everything we possibly could. I'll actually take the blame for last week's podcast.
I think it was my fault. I think that was my fault. I think I missed one day where
it's one of those things, timing, and I mean we recorded some audio as well for it, and it's just I didn't even wear headphones. Like, it's one of those things, like it's the holiday season can screw up people, whether you're not even visiting family or not, whether you're not 100%. Having any guests over. Like, it's just like something in the air that's just like everyone's thinking about sugar plums and Santa's cookies and whatever else you're thinking of, right? Like, there's stuff going on. It's an expensive time of the season for two. Like, you could be thinking about bills and stuff like that. Like, right. At the end of the day, whatever. There's stuff going on for everyone. This is podcast number 2, and we'll catch up with you guys next week.
That's right. I just want to give a little bit of closer. That is the end of the podcast. If you enjoyed the Yell Horn episode 2, you'll definitely enjoy our content on both of our YouTube channels. Of course, I'm Maddie. My YouTube channel is Chill TCG. Cover plenty of PTCGO and Pokemon TCG videos. And of course, Zach Lesage has his own channel, which is called The Lone Blown.
Check it out.
Zach, you definitely probably, I would say, have a bit of a more focus on the competitive aspect of Pokemon.
I would say it's more competitive. Like, yeah. I put a lot of my like personal tested go-to deck list that I would like if I was playing on a Luke Metal list. Luke Metal list on my channel is the one that I'm pulling out. Just try to be as clear as possible there.
Right. So if you guys are interested in high-level deck lists, decks that are proven to be successful, that's definitely the place to go. And with that being said, this episode of the podcast was sponsored by GG Tour. Not only do they sponsor our tournament series, but now they're sponsoring our podcasts as well. GG Tour, not only do they host Pokemon TCG tournaments, they also host tournaments for a variety of games, things like Fall Guys, things like Minion Masters, and a wide variety of other games with large cash prize pools as well. So if you're interested and you play maybe some other games and you're looking to play some tournaments for something other than Pokemon TCG, or if you are just looking for Pokemon TCG, definitely go check out ggtour.com. Link will be down in the description below. But with that being said, let's bounce out of here, Zach.
Take it easy, y'all.
Bye.